The issue I have with the Supra, for as competent and for as high of a performance ceiling as it has, is that it's just not that. It's the final year of the Toyota GR Supra, and you guys may have seen my other video on the final edition, which was about how that car really wasn't what we wanted or expected from the top of the line final edition, last hurrah of the Mark V Toyota Supra. But this is a 2026 Toyota GR Supra Base, the cheapest Supra you can get. There's the Base, there's the Premium, and then there's the final edition. This one actually is $11,000 cheaper than the final edition. And the question I want to answer today is this the actual Supra you should get? We're powered by the same B58 engine that's also in the Premium and the final edition. That's a 3-liter inline-6 that's turbocharged, making 382 horsepower, 368 pound-feet of torque, but it is underrated from factory. It's making more around 400 plus at the crank. Weighing in at 3,400 pounds, electric power steering with strut front and multi-link rear suspension. Now this base model also includes some optional extras like the Tech Package Plus, which is a $3,000 option, adds the JBL sound, $1,000 destination, so the total price is $62K. Keep in mind that the Base has Alcantara seats just like the final edition, but no head-up display. The Premium gives you leather heated seats, a head-up display, JBL sound, wireless CarPlay, integrated nav, and wireless charging. The actual looks and the styling of the Supra, a little bit polarizing. I think most of us would say this is a sharp-looking car that has great street presence for the price. Not like the FT1 Concept. I had the FT1 Concept, you know, back when I was in college and med school. For years, it was my wallpaper because I loved the way that car looked. But as Jason Camisa on a Haggerty video pointed out, you know, the hard points, because they're sharing this with the BMW Z4, they couldn't keep it quite as stretched out. They had to really shrink it. And as a result, it doesn't look quite as sexy as that glorious, gorgeous FT1 Concept. But I still think it looks pretty sharp. Even with all the fake vents, I think it still looks pretty good. And with this pearl white, I dig it, I dig it. The issue, if you're taller, I'm 6'1", I think even shorter drivers too have the issue of hitting their head across that roof line there. So you gotta be very careful getting in. Duck your head nice and low. There have actually been times on track when I'm driving a Supra that with my helmet, I have to crouch even lower and then I get like cramps, you know, by my intercostal muscles and my abs and such. Interior, a very familiar place. You don't have quite the same level of materials as the higher trim Toyota Supras, but I think this is plenty adequate for the price. Of course, this is the last gen BMW switchgear and infotainment and such. I like the gauge, mixing both digital and physical elements. I think that's nice and cool. And in terms of drive modes, we can press Sport, which gets us into our Sport individual mode. And we have rev match disabled because we want to rev match our own downshifts. Engine, steering, and damping all in Sport. I love that the owner, Chris, optioned this with the manual transmission, getting a little bit more of that engagement. Red line at 7,000. Traction kicking in already, quite conservatively. Let's see if we can actually make it partially disabled. There we go. Sport traction. Now with the final edition, they made some changes to the suspension, to the bushings, and so on. And when I drove that car a few months ago on a different road, I mentioned it felt more similar than different. Now I am a few months removed, and now on a different road entirely. This road is far more bumpy. And the first impression right now is that the rear end is a little bit bouncier. And I think that likely is due to that suspension tuning. The Base and the Premium, from what it feels like, these seem to be a little bit more tail happy, a little bit more on edge, whereas the final edition, I wouldn't say neutralizes that, but makes it feel a little bit more confident and planted and not quite as twitchy and bouncy at the rear end. And let's give you guys a pull. Tons of performance. The B58 has so much torque down low, just a totally flat power delivery, which it feels very competent, but if I'm being honest, it's not the most emotional or inspirational kind of engine character. Let's also dial back the damping here to normal to see if we can reduce a bit of that bounciness. Leaving the steering and the engine both in sport though. This car actually has the shortest wheelbase out of the 3 GR performance cars. The GR Corolla, the GR86. And as a result, it's actually very willing to rotate. The issue I have with the Supra, for as competent and for as high of a performance ceiling as it has, is that it's just not that communicative, because underneath the skin it is, after all, a BMW, and just like modern BMWs, it can be a bit numb. The car wants to give you a bit of rotation at that rear axle. You gotta hold it back, otherwise these cars can get a little bit too sideways and get out of hand. The manual transmission here, I would say though, is actually better than most of the BMW manuals in modern era. Sure, it does have a little bit of that BMW rubberiness, but it's actually reduced. I do believe Toyota when they say that they tuned the manual transmission to make it feel better than what they were just given. Now, if you want to go auto, of course the ZF 8-speed is also a perfectly fine transmission. It's very impressive as a torque converter, very quick, very smooth shifts. The brakes here nice and firm. And when you get into it, you have that beautiful high-resolution modulation. I just wish I was getting more from the steering, even in sport mode here. The weighting is totally adequate. Even the steering ratio, a bit on the slightly quicker side, but not in a problematic way. I just don't get much mid-corner load up and don't really get much feel and feedback either. Now, I'm not sure if it's just me imagining things or if it's the road. This does feel, even with the damping on normal, it does dial back the adaptive dampers and you can feel the difference, but it still feels stiffer sprung, and especially at the rear, a little bit more bouncy and more willing to get unsettled at the rear. But then the question becomes, okay, you want a Supra because you love the performance, you love what it stands for, inline 6, turbocharged engine, just like the Mark IV, although more sporty, less GT compared to that Mark IV Supra. And it does a lot of things right. You have the forged crankshaft. It's not an iron block, but it's an aluminum block that actually can handle a lot more as well. So you have this massive tuning potential and performance ceiling. The question then becomes, where should your money go? And if it was me, maybe because I value the driving experience and the nuances there a bit more, I can give up a head-up display, I can give up certain materials, I can give up the fancy badging, and I can give up, you know, the car not being one of 1,500 or whatever it is for the final edition. I would take the money I save, and it's actually going to be more than $11,000 simply because the final editions all have markup, and I would put that towards mods. And probably just the suspension, first and foremost. And if I want a little bit more communication, I'd do especially some bushings and some supporting suspension mods at the front end to help with that. And I would still come out ahead versus a final edition. You know, the Supra, the various examples I've driven, the ones that are close to stock, I respect them so much for what they are. They have this performance ceiling. And I get it, in modern day, cars are becoming more and more numb. They're not quite as communicative and, you know, sharp and not as much NVH. It's a little bit more insulated and numb. So I respect the car for what it is in modern day. But I think to justify it completely is also a bit dishonest, because you have cars like the Mazda Miata, various Porsche products like even the Boxster and the Cayman, that do give you a bit more communication. You know, part of that is the weight, 3,400 pounds versus Cayman Boxster, which are a few hundred pounds lighter. The Miata, which is like 1,000 pounds lighter. And that's part of it. But part of it is the tuning philosophy. And since this car is a BMW through and through, a lot of that modern BMW-ness comes through. So if the Supra does have a successor, I hope that it is fully Japanese, fully Toyota from the ground up, and I wonder what they can do, because when they do apply themselves, I feel like they can really achieve a truly special driving experience. And sure, historically, all the Toyota sports cars, they tend to be appreciated by the car enthusiasts far after the car is no longer produced. But the reason I respect this car and I don't love it isn't because it's a BMW, it's because the BMW characteristics of having a lot of performance but not a lot of feel come through in the driving experience. So again, if it was my money, I would go with the base, and I would use that money to then modify a bit more feel and theater into the car, get more feedback, get a little bit sharper communication through the chassis and through the front end, and then I think you have a really performance bargain car. But my friends, let me know what you think. Would you go base and modify it, or just go for the final edition? Let me know with a comment down below. Big shout out to the owner Chris for letting me review his GR Supra, and if you want your car reviewed, visit us on jabbalandcars.com. Fill out the form on the homepage. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.